False alarm, I thought that help was here. But it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink them twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Reade came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of 3-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reade gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bares their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are.
salaries stagnate, a living wage, snap the chains and bury it. Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph R. Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren, say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights, forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near, and all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't. My lips, brand new taxes, starving all the billionaires and neutering their Visa Maxes. Topple Congress off their axis, mobilize the homeless, give them axes, call it praxis. Chop a couple limbs off the legislative branches, we'll show you the difference between air as a human right and guaranteed oxygen access. Octogenarians who barely know what day it is are culling countless citizens while sitting on a dais made of ignorance that was built on the graves of the slaves made to labor for its self-declared significance. And all to build a Congress full of millionaires who make their fortunes insider trading while they shit on all the indigent. So I got a bone to pick with our leaders, and I'll start with the ligaments. Pick right through the muscle, dig the marrow out, and serve it to the unhoused millions living in their minivans or watching their belongings get evicted from their tenement. I have a dream where we breach the walls of Congress and just let them in. And what happens next will survive in only text, 'cause there won't be any evidence. There will only be that heavy kind of feeling that pervades a space where there has been a reckoning and you can feel its remnants.
Let any man who enters seeking power know that those who came before him suffocated on their eminence. That there once was a seal on the wall, but we quartered it and scattered all the pieces that it might prevent its semblance. And so we end the great experiment. We'll take all your billions, leave you 2 coins for the ferryman. Leave you drifting on a Dutchman floating derelict among the wretched seraphim. For holy is the hand that wiped the land clean of those who pose as gentlemen. That's my time, honey, cue the thunderclap and strike the theremin. And so we end the great experiment. Give you 2 coins for the ferryman.
Welcome everyone to the Politics of Survival. I'm your host, Tara Reade, and I have a really fascinating show tonight with someone whom I greatly admire and who's been on the show before. In fact, I think he's been on enough we can call him a regular. His name is, he is a producer and a director. He's worked with Oliver Stone on such films as Snowden, the Putin interviews for Showtime. And of course, he directed Kazakh, which recently came out, and also with a series of Ukraine on Fire, Revealing Ukraine. And you can find all of that on Rumble. Igor Lopatonok. Welcome, Igor. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Tara, for inviting me, and thank you, everyone. We have
So I was chatting with you, and as you know, I had Ava Bartlett, the investigative journalist who's in the Donbass region right now, and she's, really exposing the war crimes of the Ukraine military, including the pedal mines, which we can get into. But one of the things that came up is she was on the Ukrainian military kill list, and she's in Donbass, so that's a very scary reality. And then, of course, there's been the horrific bombing of the 29-year-old young journalist, Daria Dugina, and the Western media, rather than covering that as a terrorist assassination of Daria, who is the daughter of Alexander Dugin, the famous philosopher and political scientist, they decided to use it as a chance to smear her further or not cover it at all. So then I find out, chatting with you, that you are on the Ukraine military kill list. I was really shocked and worried, and I'm glad you're here on the show, and you know a lot about it, and I'm hoping that you can educate our audience a little bit about the originator of this list, what it means, this website, and why is the West, like the Western governments, not doing anything about prominent people, American citizens as well, being on a military kill list for Ukraine.
Okay, so let me start with a simple question to the audience. What makes such a name as Roger Waters, founder of Pink Floyd, Oliver Stone, film director, Igor Lopatonok, who's a small little producer and director.
Oh, you're a very well-renowned producer director.
As well as Henry Kissinger, who was a very much like a neoconservative politician from United States, who's one day calling to bomb Moscow, and as well famously known in Ukraine, maybe a little known in the West, Mikhail Saakashvili, who is also on the list. What's making these all names similar? They all enemy of Ukrainian state. And the state, called it enemy of people of Ukraine, but enemy of regime, now currently represented as a well-known clown Zelensky, who is, push it to the very top. He is like more popular than Michael Jackson, I believe, now in the world. And before that, that regime was led by another, the leader, the Petro Poroshenko. So let me tell you a little bit of story of this interesting, very interesting formation, and very important part of this mechanic of informational war operation, what's Ukraine running now around the world. Why it's important to know to the Western audience? Because, when George Orwell wrote his 1984, he never expected it will be as a script for some forces to, and
a reality show, right?
Yeah, the reality show, very well written and very, very carefully executed. So, when 2014 coup d'etat happened in Ukraine, and the activists, so-called activists, lead the mobs on a field of Maidan in Kiev and killed protesters, and the protesters was killed by an order of the opposition leaders, because they need to steer the attention from the media. And one person in American embassy, we still not identify that person, man or woman, tell to one prominent Ukrainian nationalist, so you're talking about few killed, it doesn't count. To make the steer, you need to make 100. And they close their mouths, they walk out, and they proceed to working on this, and they kill 100, less than 100, 49, and after that, they pushing numbers up to the 100. Putting everyone on the list, even the man who hung him up in a Christmas tree in the middle of Maidan. Can you imagine? It's a horrible, horrible pictures, horrible. The situations. The center of European country, man hanging him up on a Christmas tree, set up in a central square, and they put him on the list of people who sacrifice his life for the freedom. What the freedom? He just committed suicide. Anyway, so informational operations, this is when you manipulate media in a way to achieve your goals in a war. War was against Ukrainian people, and they also choose the Russia as a target, because you need a big bad wolf, and Mr. Putin was pretty much very well suited for that. Big, and it's only try to present him bad, but it is only one thing here. If another voice available for the audience who tell an alternative version of the truth, this is a big trouble for them, because people can see this opinion and alternative opinion, and they can choose what they believe. The masterminds of informational wars formulated very, very clever. We don't want any alternative voices, so let's eliminate, let's make, and let's amplify and make it sounds polyphonic. So we don't need to repeat, this is an enemy, we need to say bad guy, enemy, like traitor. So make it sounds like a polyphonic, so people will be easy to believe. And for that reason, it's a lot of people who are already brainwashed. They need a target. They need something to do, something to occupy. They're sitting on their sofa, they're sitting in front of their computer, they have nothing to do, and they have will to fight. They want to cause damage. They want to kill someone. Of course, they cannot do that, for sure, because people who sitting on the sofa and staring in their computer, they never killing other people. So, but if you feed them proper targets, they can do a lot of collateral damage. For that reason, in 2014, the website called Peacekeeper was created in Ukraine. And first, when he was created, they said, we helping the law enforcement to fight the separatists in Donbass. We want to publish all their names. We want to publish all pictures of that people. We want to publish all their personal data, what we obtain legally and illegally. Legally, that means from the open sources, from the social media, etc., etc. Illegally, from the hacking.
Okay.
So they hack resources, and after that they steal, and after that they publish. Here in the West, we call it doxing. But doxing, imagine if we, Democratic Party or DNC, set up the website and put all Republicans on that website. Everybody who's saying something against the
I wonder,
Party.
Igor, if that was the Ministry of Truth that they were trying to do. I wonder if that was the next step. But anyway,
you know, Ukraine all the time was a polygon, testing site for technology. So if something emerges in Ukraine, be ready. It will be transiting to the United States because it's the same operators who teaching. We will come later to this, who really behind of this website. So that activists who's struggling, who have little money, they steal a lot of attention because they start using the techniques, putting somebody famous on their website. And they started with, of course, they started with the Russian celebrities. They put everyone who was visiting Crimea for their concerts, just for regular media business. They put that on a website because people know that names and that bringing attention to them. After that, they find a very, very clever curator. His name, Anton Gerashchenko. He was a parliament member of Ukraine. And he was, but it's important call here to understand he was a ID of very well-known opposition leader in Ukraine during the Maidan time. With his name, Arsen Avakov. And now we come into the very interesting connection because for what famous Arsen Avakov, very little people in the West know that Arsen Avakov was a godfather of Azov Battalion.
So
and
he
exactly
was the founder. He was the founder of Azov Battalion, the Nazi battalion that's operating right now in Ukraine.
He is enabler and a godfather who protecting them, and who later he is incorporated Azov Battalion as a paramilitary formation and give them a status of National Guard formation of Ukraine.
And,
so he practically.
This coup, if I can interrupt for 1 second, this coup that Victoria Nuland, by the way, was very involved with, and that's what Julian Assange exposed, right, in 2014.
Yes.
And you go into great depth about the history in Ukraine on Fire. So how our audience can watch that on Rumble and other ways, right? But so he was the mastermind, kind of like really making this website what it is now. Is that what you're saying?
You know what? First of all, the Mr. Avakov, who was serving as a Minister of Internal Affairs, he is a ruthless guy. I believe he is responsible for killing a lot of people. His ID, Anton Gerashchenko, was very, very much advocating for that website, Peacekeeper, and helping them, announcing the news from that website. So they work. It is no problem. This is no doubt in me what they working together and amplifying and set up in this entity. And I also need to one more important things what we need to understand. This is how that history related to the foreign helpers. So from the foreign helpers, I just want to stop and name one, but very clever, but very interesting name, who is a Joel Hardling. My dear friend George Ellison spent a lot of time investigating the role of Hardling in he's the guy who was deployed. First of all, Joel Hardling is a colonel of United States Army. He was employed as an intelligence officer in Langley, and he worked on setting up the structure of Ukrainian informational war against Russia for the cause of justifying. And so practically, if you want to know who is responsible for brainwashing of Ukrainians, this is the guy. He brings the technology, he brings the ideas, templates, methods, and the resources. And of course, they bragging what that website bragging on the open page. So they located in Langley, Virginia.
Yeah, that I saw that. Ava Bartlett highlighted that. What could you explain to the audience what the meaning of that is? The Langley, because this is the confusion people have. A few years ago, the State Department deemed this website a terrorist website. Now they're not backing. They're backing off that. And now it seems to be supported by the U.S. government. People are confused. So can you
First of
clarify?
all, we need to understand then from 2016, especially from January 12, 2017, Joel Harding was gone because he was not in charge anymore because of President Trump proceed to be president. So the Democrats lose. The Biden team was withdrawing. And of course, everybody who was in a position here in states, some of them lost that positions. This is why Harding was not on the ground from 2017 to 2020. He come back exactly after inauguration of President Biden, and still very much active. This is explaining why the State Department designated as inappropriate, because what's happened next? We need to understand what's happened after
people actually died. Yeah.
People actually died. And I need to stop on this and say that's not only it was like, I will call some names. It was a very famous Ukrainian writer, Ales Buzina, whom I admire for his very clever position and calling the name by the names, all Nazi or fascist, everyone who was in that bloody coup d'etat come to power, and he was against that. They kill him. They brag that the peacekeeper website contained 600,000 personal records on the enemy of Ukraine.
Wow.
And also so another one, Ales Buzina was not was a first big name, but also was later was others. Oleg Krasheninnikov, the parliament member, was killed after 2 days when his personal data was published on that website. And they not stopping to make public personal data of minors. They put the girl from Ukraine, 13-year-old teenager, for
13 years old. Yeah. She wrote in opposition. She was published. She's actually published, and she wrote about what was going on, and she's on their kill list, correct?
Yes. And after that, the peacekeeper website was famous. What they hacked the media accreditation of more than 5,000 Western journalists who was covering the civil war in Donbass from 2014 and publish it. For that reason, the European Union and ambassador of European Union to Ukraine and many other and even Ukrainian ombudsman for the human rights, they was requesting the national security and special security service of Ukraine to shut down the website, because it's publishing personal data of people, they home addresses, their phone numbers, bank accounts.
Okay, and can I add something? You know what else they do is when someone is killed, they put a line through their picture and say in English, it translates as liquidated.
Correct. Yeah. They did
that with Daria Dugina, who was on that list. And, Ava Bartlett, I wanted to say another thing about Ava Bartlett, who's bravely still doing her reporting from, that area. She, Louise Mensch, who's a character on Twitter or whatever. And so when people troll, you don't think much of it. But 2 days after Louise Mensch located Ava, put her location and tagged the Ukrainian military, and then she's on the military kill list, her hotel was bombed where Ava was staying and other journalists. And she was, luckily she was able to escape, but she could have been killed.
This is very, very dangerous technique. For example, it's a lot of idiots in Ukrainian army. It's not only commanders who operate; they have their own gods to kill. So they need just a tool to find the target. If you remember, the Italian journalist Andrea Roccelli was also killed, and they brag about this, liquidated on the Meritorious website. So
it's horrific. Absolutely horrific.
Or we still don't know what's happened to the Faina Savenkova. This is a 13-year-old
still missing.
teenager.
How old was that journalist?
13. It's not a journalist. I'm talking about the Ukrainian girl.
Oh, the Ukrainian. Okay. The child.
Yeah. So you remember what's happened to Gonzalo Lira, another American journalist who was working in Kharkov, who was disappeared because he was doxed by the peacekeeper. So it is dangerous things, but biggest stir happened when the peacekeeper website bragged about liquidation of Daria Dugina, and after that they published it. I believe they did it in 2018. They published the Roger Waters, and but that's make a big news about this. Not in 2019, but in 2022, because Roger Waters go public and say what he's thinking about President Biden as a war criminal.
Yeah, that he called it what it is. It's a proxy war against Russia.
Yeah.
Using Ukraine. Yeah, and he called it out. He called it out that it's benefiting weapons manufacturers, and for that, he called it out on some major media.
If people want to know more in details about what's happened with this website, I strongly suggest to read the publication in a gray zone about. It's very fresh. It's Deborah Armstrong from August 25,
right.
and follow George Ellison on the Twitter, who is very much engaging in this. Russians also investigate. They find very interesting facts about.
Yeah, I wanted to differentiate something. If you could help our audience learn about this, because they've been hearing about these lists. There's two different lists. One of them is called the Ukrainian government blacklist. That's different. That has a bunch of journalists from RT on it that are, basically banned from going to Ukraine, I guess, and things like that. And then this is the military kill list. So two very separate lists. But
I think, Tara, it's not properly to say military, because military is not such a big danger for people, because people in the military, they work on the battlefield, they busy. But people who is not working in the military, so we can call that. And they now, it's interesting. They trying to distance themselves from Ukrainian government or from special security of Ukraine.
This website, this peacekeepers website, they're trying
to distance them. This is a clear sign what they related, and they collaborate exactly with Ukrainian government. This is blessed by Ukrainian government. This is what government cannot do openly. They publish that blacklist. It's bullshit. But this website, government recommend. So, for example, National Bank of Ukraine issued the recommendation before giving a credit to the people. Check them on that website if they here who borrow the money from the banks. Ukrainian Custom Border Patrol from 2014 using that website and checking on everyone who crossing the border of Ukraine. And if you on that website, 100% you cannot enter. They will turn you back. So this is a government resource. What very shady, illegal, and violate a bunch of law in Ukraine, a lot of law in the European Union and in the United States, and it's still operating safely. What I can do? What can say that? This is a hypocrisy.
I want to ask you a question. How are you feeling, and Oliver, because I'm assuming you've talked with him about this, about being on this list? I mean, because, this is the difference. The people that died, that were killed before, were in Ukraine, except Daria was in Moscow. So I guess, I mean, are you feeling worried or concerned about your security? And I'm just kind of wanting to ask you about how.
Sarah, I feel I respect it as a badge of honor. I'm in a very good
Okay.
company here.
Okay.
With a very good names whom I love and whom I admire a lot, like a Roger
Okay.
Waters or Oliver Stone or great Russian directors, actors, and singers. They put us all together. So it's like,
Okay.
if you're not on that website, you're probably doing something wrong, because Ukrainians do not put you on a kill list.
Mhm.
We also know who is helping them. So that the famous Elliot Higgins Bellingcat, who is a
Yes.
frontman for MI6, who is openly openly NATO affiliated, the Atlantic Council organization. He was on a payroll for this organization, and he was a very big, how to say, specialist, the expert on harassing people through the open sources. He was
just harassing me last week. That's interesting. On Twitter.
He engaged me
Elliot
as well.
character.
He engaged me as well, but he was busted a lot of time. My dear friend Anatoly Shary, the prominent Ukrainian blogger in exile, he lived in Spain. He was busted a lot of operation of Elliot Higgins. And what most interesting thing, what you need to understand about Elliot Higgins, that amount of signet what they process, or that amount of open source information, intelligence from open sources, what they process, that's required the hundreds of thousands of years of processing. So they not do it that themselves. They the frontmen, and they was exposed as a frontmen for the Integrity Initiative. Integrity Initiative, this is a NATO formation what's operate to counter offense and the Russian, and they call Russian propaganda, and offense and defend. But they defense usually look like an attack. So instead of the counter propaganda, they just doing just very brutal propaganda work, and they working as a frontman for the agencies what cannot disclose the possession of this information, like an MI6, CIA, NSA, or others. So,
well, I want to bring us back for a second to something that's really concerning. When Ava was on my show, she discussed, she has a Canadian passport. She also has an American one.
Yeah.
But she appealed to her Canadian government. She said they were sort of okay, but they weren't really helpful for her. She, you know what I mean, as far as like safety issues, like Trudeau's not calling it out, right? Justin Trudeau. She even, I think, put up a tweet. And you know what, Reef, if you want, you can go ahead and post Ava's tweet. She kind of gave the history that you did, Igor.
Yeah.
She mirrored that and to give people the information. But I guess I want you to, I want to know, because I noticed that when Daria Dugina was assassinated, just 3 days later, the Biden administration gave $3 billion more in aid to Ukraine. And there was not a word in mainstream media about this being a terrorist act. In fact, they even kind of try to cast doubt on the investigation because FSB found who did it and exposed that it was a Ukrainian SBU. And instead of like reporting that, you saw CNN and some of them dance around it and make it seem like, oh, this is unverified.
Yeah, first of all, this operation was very dirty, executed very dirty with a lot of tails. They cached that records of Natalia Shaban, who was a Ukrainian military serviceman before. Her son is Ukrainian military, and she was traveling a lot. She knows a few languages, and now the latest from Russian law enforcement, they published the name. It's very funny how CNN and New York Times try to whitewash Ukrainian dirt, because Ukrainians decide to distance themselves from the Dugina assassination because it's a very bad publicity. This is an act of terror, and if government commit and support act of terror, this is like the government of terrorists. So we have no doubt in this, but collective West still thinking as Zelensky about like kind of secret people. No. So there is a Dugina assassination, but the problem here, they start blaming the FSB to killing her, as usually they do. They do it before when they famous the ex KGB officer Litvinenko, who said Putin is blowing the houses in Moscow to organize the second phase of Chechen war. He provided no fucking evidence about this.
Yeah.
The biggest evidences was what the FSB conducting the drill with the wheat in a big packages in the basements of houses, and it was only evidence of FSB blowing the houses in Moscow. So they do exactly said that. Elliot Higgins already on top of that, they started said she was thrown out of the car, she was not blown. It's all bullshit, you know. This is how they're trying to help Mr. Zelensky do not be in such a dirt. But you know, if the real crime happened, so now they find out who was helper of Natalia Vovk, and they just published the video of they together, and they said what he was doing. He was helping to arrange the bomb, and they using the garage of Natalia Vovk in Moscow to prepare that bomb, who was placed under the car to blow Dugina car and kill her. So practically, this is very clever. But you know, you cut the RT or Russian information sources out of West. Not such a lot of people reading in the Russian language. Not such a lot of people using Telegram as a source of information, but more and more, and Russian journalists start making they post in English, and also, you know, it's a lot of translation service, automated translation service, what you can read the Russian website and you can get to information. Very clever. So you need
and you can see RT on Rumble. I mean, and
yeah, you can see RT on Rumble, yeah,
and it's Gab as well. You can watch it.
So that things about the peacekeeper important to understand. They will try to export this technology here. They will try to establish some kind of kill list of the internal, like a domestic terrorist. That's how they call everyone who disagree with the policy of Joe Biden. And as soon as closer we can come to the midterms in November, we can see more and more development in this. But I believe that we need to break that news so that Peacekeeper website was supported and founded by same man who established a brutal Nazi formation, as everybody in the world knows,
Azov Battalion.
Azov Battalion. Yeah, that's giving the people right sense, because that's the same technique, same methods, same brutal and ruthless tactic of intimidation what Nazi use and fascists use in the Nazi Germany, and that now they're using this in Ukraine. And they will try.
You know what George Galloway said about that, Igor? George Galloway just today said even the mafia didn't kill each other's children. You know.
Yeah,
George Galloway was comparing the brutality of the Ukrainian, how they're operating. It's ugly.
You know, mafia did not, but Nazi did. They killed the children. Yeah, so
Nazis
that's so we need to understand this is like a dangerous situation. If we will not expose them, if we will not talk about them, if we will not show how they operate and what the cause, they will use more and more people here in the West will be endangered by, say, technique and intimidation. And you know what? It's much way tougher Russian people who don't give a shit about this. You know, that the Azov Battalion just published some brutal publication about what they put Margarita Simonyan, the chief editor, in a court hearing, and they explain in a very graphic details how they want to kill her and where. So this is a tactic of intimidation. Don't be scared, Tara, because they used that before, they use it that now, because they Nazi. We need to call them by their names. We need to point the finger and say, this is Nazi, and your tactic not gonna work with me, because I have a lot of friends, and we're gonna expose you, we will bring you to justice, and we will talk to real people who understand. You cannot support the Nazi. You cannot, because if you're gonna support them, they're gonna win, and they're gonna use that techniques of intimidation and threats against you.
And you know what's really remarkable to me is that you have people that are Americans that are of prominence on this kill list, right? And the Biden administration itself, the Biden administration, Department of Defense, they say nothing. The State Department, they say nothing. So that leads everyone to conclude that they're in collusion in accordance with this, in cooperation and somehow. Because they're not condemning it. They're not coming out. They're not protecting their own citizens from Ukraine, which is, and the amount of money that is going for weapons in Ukraine is unbelievable. I think we're almost at 60 billion now.
Yeah, Tara, I'm sorry, but what do you want from the president who was racketeering that president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, threatened to withdraw 1 billion in loan if he will not stop and not firing the attorney general, Mr. Shokin. And the people who was breaking this story, they put them on a sanction list. Oh, come on.
Yeah,
that's like people who is covering their back. So what we need to do to fight them, we need to elect a new government. We need to immediately have a leader who is America deserve it. This is our homeland. This is a great country. When America dream was used to live, where is that America dream? Look on our streets. Look on our division. We divided like hell. Yeah. We hate each other. The Republicans hate Democrats. That's not good.
And then Biden just came out and called people MAGA. He calls them MAGA Republicans are semi-fascist. And whatever that means. Like I mean, it's like I think Aaron Mate said today on his show, he was just like, it's like the group of them were in a room and they were like, call them fascists. And then the person said, don't call them fascists, call them semi-fascists. What I mean, but it's a technique. And I kind of said this myself. This is just a campaign technique to divide the Republican Party. So in voters' minds, there's two different kinds of Republicans. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a technique, a propaganda technique that's they're trying to do right before the midterms to try to get people away from
here,
Trump.
Because, I see that in Ukraine and, projecting Ukrainian experience on American soil. This is what gives me a kind of understanding of pattern, what can happen next. So for that reason, I'm very afraid about. So, for example, let's see what's happened to that infamous FBI raid in Mar-a-Lago. This is not only attack on a Trump. This is attack on a presidency. Yeah. And this is a dangerous thing because no one before experienced such a brutality from not elected official. The President Trump was selected by people of United States, by the people, for the people. He served his office. What he's do? They tried it twice with Ukrainian help to impeach him. They failed. Now they're trying to prevent him from coming to the office again. But problem is here, not Mr. Trump. Problem is the Institute of State. This is a statehood under attack, presidency under attack. They committing the crime against the presidency, not against Donald Trump. They endangering our statehood because as soon, it's exactly same as call to defund the police or do something else to justify the violence, justify behavior of Black Lives Matter or other troublemakers, Antifa on the streets, what you can put the fire on the streets of American cities. No, this is a this is a bad way. This is a way to the civil war here, because when you seed that seeds in a human souls and they start hate each other more and more, sooner or later they come into the street, they bring their guns and they commit tremendous disaster right in a chaos. That's what's happened in Ukraine, and after that chaos, war is coming. So what we're doing here for our homeland, we're trying to protect, we're trying to show them an example of Ukraine, what to avoid to all costs. I'm totally different now than I'm 2 years ago, because first of all, I see this Republican and Democrats competition and division just as a one big staged play when the actors, real actors, it's like the same elite from the left or the right, but they enjoying the manipulation of regular people and bringing them informational causes, but they will distract them from answering on the question why we living so bad, why
is the economy so terrible,
why it's so terrible, why it's America look like a third country now. I'm sorry, I'm driving in Los Angeles, it's remind me Ukraine now, and the quality of the streets, how troubled that streets of Los Angeles now. They never was, it was never so bad.
Yeah, and you know, I said this recently in a recent little video clip, but I really mean it. I think this war, this proxy war against Russia that the US and NATO is fighting, will go down in history as one of the biggest money laundering scams of the elite. I mean, it's just, it ballooned and ballooned from 2014 over 8 years into this huge money laundering scheme. And now, you know, people are getting the truth. The Hunter laptop was verified, that, you know, and it wasn't about like the salacious stuff about the prostitutes and all that. That's there, right? What that was about was the corruption that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were engaged in, using government funding and engaging and enriching themselves in a corrupt way. And, you know, it's just, it's coming forward.
Yeah, I even believe that I watched that teaser for the film about Hunter. Unfortunately, my personal opinion is very low because it's no cast, and they did it like such a straight way. It looked like very
good film.
Not very good. I don't see the film. I see the trailer. That's important. I probably gonna see the film, but I believe that was kind of special op to make another filmmakers do not make the film on same subject, but make that, you know, if for example Oliver Stone make that film, that will be totally different, the quality of implementation. But if you want to whitewash something, and you know what, our intelligence community did it before a lot of times. So for example, they whitewashing that CIA operation in the Nicaragua, what Robert Perry break that story together with the later Secretary of State, and this time just a Congressman Kerry. So they broke that story, and they put, look, who is Oliver North who operate this. He's a head of NRA, and he has own show before on a Fox News. But on another side, I can also make an example. Good movie, An American, with Tom Cruise in the lead role, who was playing the guy who was transporting that cocaine from Nicaragua on his plane. But have no doubt, this is like whitewashing, that, you know, you need to make that movie to make that situation look different in the this is why I myself very carefully looking who is. I'm not jumping on the boats and saying, oh, it's a great movie. No, I don't see the film. I see the trailer, and from trailer perspectives and the names who behind that, I see no quality of real good story. Because if you do it like as a black comedy, as a good satire, that will be big, like you remember this with Dustin Hoffman,
right.
Wag the Dog, Wag the Dog. That was a great
Day
film.
Afternoon.
So, but
and Marathon Man. Both those films.
I believe that's the movies are the films, not a documentary, but as features, used a lot in a national and serve a lot for the national security cause. Even the greatest film, what I admire as a filmmaker, because they make perfect. So look at Top Gun Maverick. This is amazing. The money making machine, and a very popular film, very clever done by Tom Cruise, but without help from the Pentagon to project that how ideal American military or Navy pilots.
They even had American military recruiting tables set up in the film lobbies.
Of course.
Yeah.
And but the estimate of help in the giving permission to film is not charging money, and American military installations less huge. There's hundreds of millions for that film only. And of course, it's hard to get a permit if you're saying something critical, and the Pentagon has the conditions when they're reading scripts very carefully. This is a very good book. It's called National Security Cinema, what my dear friend Oliver suggests me to read. I read it. It's a very interesting book. It's an investigation of all that feelings and how Pentagon was involved. So we are in a time where a very different war is played. So Ukrainians winning the war in Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. They bragging about their counteroffense. You will see the real result will be very horrible. There will be a lot of casualties, and the how to say dedication. What's Boris Johnson just announced on his latest visit in Kiev to fight that war until last Ukrainians. So this is what they want to do. They don't want that war.
They want to make it a long-term commitment because it's enriching the military-industrial complex. That's
correct.
Yeah,
that's exactly
that's
what they
obvious.
need. They need the dragon war, and they're gonna do this exactly this way. They're not gonna give any help to Ukraine, what can escalate it over and give Ukrainians chance to win. Ukrainians need to understand it, but unfortunately, that guy Zelensky not a person who has critical thinking. He is a person who has a critically huge ego, and that ego making him believe that he is a leader of free world. He is
I wanted to ask you about something, but
Okay.
I'll save it. I'll wait for a second because Reef, I know that our audience probably has some questions or comments. Did you want to highlight any of them, Reef? You have to take yourself off mute.
That would also help, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So John McCarthy asked, can you comment on the fact that the first 30 of the people on this list have all spoken at conferences organized by Helga Zepp-LaRouche's Schiller Institute? Do you have anything to say on that?
Yes, I believe that LaRouche Institute as a peace maker, they're very dangerous for that. And there's as people who expose that coup and expose the wheel of imperialism, they were important enemies for them. This is why they put in all of them on the list, because they call in the names.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was one more that just wanted you to repeat who was brainwashing the Ukrainian people. I think they missed that.
The name of the person, the master manipulator.
Yeah.
The mastermind who teach Ukrainians how to brainwash, how to fight informational war was a Joel Harding. And this, our guy, Harding, the expert in this is a George Ellison who studied Harding. Oh, by the way, Harding, as I know, engaged him directly. And he said, nobody gonna listen to you. You will have no platform, George. Nobody, zero. Well, it's not true. I very much admire clever mind of George Ellison and his
I highlight his work a lot. He's really, really good. He's really
a real American conservative who's find himself in Ukraine on the side of close to Lugansk, on the side when that rebellious part exists, and he see that alt-right sector was coming in the territory with the machine guns, and it's only American passport who saved his life, I believe.
Wow.
And but anyway, the if you need to know more about Joel Harding and his story, you probably follow George. He is more. I have an entire
and I highlight George Ellison a lot. So yeah, people can find him on Twitter.
Entire. Harding is a character for the movie. I believe he resides now in Virginia, close to that little city called Langley, because it's easy to drive to office. Yeah.
Yeah. So Igor, could you talk a little bit about this is what I wanted to bring up. You brought up Zelensky's ego and you saw the Vogue photo shoot, which was ridiculous. But what caught my mind, everyone was kind of focused on that photo shoot, was just horrific. But what caught my eye was the article that followed, trying to lift up Stephen Bandera. And I was just shocked. Like it was literally trying to rewrite history and make him sound like he was misunderstood and that he didn't actually commit the crimes he did. I don't know if you saw that. It was in Vogue.
You know what? Vogue was before in whitewashing Nazi. They did it before with Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
So they do it exactly same job again. And you know, we have hundreds of evidences of Stepan Bandera collaborating with Abwehr. Abwehr was a military intelligence or Wehrmacht of Nazi Germany military. So whitewashing that guy, it's like, you know, that's an impossible job, but they will try. They will try.
Yeah.
They try to put the Stepan Bandera as a they, you know what?
Yeah, over 33,000 people were murdered by him.
Very interesting subject. My son resides here in California. He was a friend with another guy when he was studying in school in Ukraine back when I was still living in Ukraine. That guy after that immigrate from Ukraine and study in Prague. I will not call the names. I'm not a peacekeeper. I keep privacy to the people. But he started engaging and commenting on my Facebook about my film, Ukrainian Fire. I make him watch. He started asking the questions. And one question was very interesting for me. Why you, me, do not investigate that intentions why Ukrainians joined the Waffen-SS division called Galiciana. So they're not, because why you not investigate in your film? Because it's evidences exist, what they write in writing about their intentions to join Waffen-SS. Like, first of all, I have no interest to investigate internal world or psychology of Waffen-SS members. I believe this is an enemy who were killing my people, who killed 27 million of Soviet people in this war, paying such a price, giving us the secret goal to eliminate the scum out of face of earth with all possible tools, military, technical, and ideological. But imagine, my son is a normal guy because he immigrated out of Ukraine. He was not brainwashed. That guy who studied Russian language, who studied Russian literature, because my son was attending the school when the Russian language was used for the teaching, and he studied Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and Gogol, greatest Russian writers. After that, for that years, what he spent 8 years under brainwashing, reading Ukrainian mass media, he is completely out of touch with history. He believed that Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Russia was a evil state. What they prosecuting people without any, and they has an intention to kill all Ukrainians or enslave them. Ukraine was a part of Soviet Union, proud republic, was flourishing under the Soviet Union, under Stalin rules. Ukraine was industrialized. It's a whole lot of plants, metallurgical plants, etc., power station, etc., was built in Ukraine. So Ukraine was built as a republic, and it was a proud republic of Soviet Union. And they fight not against Stalin, they fight against Nazi. That was only Bandera people was sitting in the forest and fighting and committing that act of terror, because their tactics of fight was completely like, ISIS tactics, intimidation, and during the night, blowing, and killing the people who collaborate. Now, what's Ukrainian media bragging about everyone civilian who is who is working with the Russian officials on a territory of Kherson or others place what was under Russian control. They bragging about killing them. They celebrating this. They say, aha, you see, the collaborators is ended very badly. But I tell it before, I choose my title for my film, our film with Oliver, Ukrainian Fire, as a respect to the Alexander Dovzhenko, greatest Ukrainian filmmaker, who wrote exactly same script, Ukrainian Fire. And that script was about why Ukrainians collaborate so badly, so heavy with the German Nazi. Around 50% of Ukrainians under occupation of Nazi was collaborating. with the Nazis. And this is in the mentality of Ukrainian people,
Wow.
because they hate the neighbor so much, so they're ready to put him in jail just to grab his wife or grab his cow or make or move to his house. So this is like mentality of Ukrainian people. That's a very bad quality of Ukrainian people. What do that mentality to grow? Because Ukraine was a borderland. Borderland was all the time when there are different geopolitical powers emerge and rise. Ukraine fall under the influence from Austro-Hungarian Empire or under the Russian influence and Soviet Empire influence. And after that, now they committing another, move to the West. What's not gonna happen because Ukrainians, they Slavs, it's a nation, have no difference with the Russian nation. They have common language, they have common faith, and they have common culture. So the Ukrainians, if you look on them, they look very differently and think very differently than Europeans. So to this presenting themselves as only one thing is what they lead in Europe. This is a level of poverty, because Ukraine is the most poor country in Europe. The second now is Kosovo. What's go ahead.
Well, I wanted you to tell the audience who may not know, who may have watched your earlier appearance, where you were born and where you're from.
Yes, I'm from Ukraine. I was born in a little city close to the Dnepropetrovsk, on the eastern part of Ukraine, and I grew up in the Soviet Union, and I immigrated to the United States in 2008.
So this is really painful. I mean, on a very deep level for you, I would imagine, to see the U.S. Engaging like this.
It's also painful because I did not see the positive calls from this for United States. We steered a huge inflation. We put the entire world order at risk. I feel very bad about my friends who living in Europe and suffering now because of the sanctioning of Russia, make their life so miserable, and they start experiencing things what they never experienced before, because they choose the wrong side. They're not thinking about their own well-being. They're thinking about well-being of Ukrainians. But honestly, Ukrainians do not need that help. If you leave them alone, if you withdraw the American influence from Ukraine, Ukraine will be at peace with their own, with Russia, in a matter of days. In a matter of days. Even contemporary, when Zelensky was already ready to negotiate with Russia, Boris Johnson jumped on a train, said, "No, dude, you cannot do that. You need to win on the battlefield first."
Yeah.
We will see few examples very soon, because it's look like Ukraine go on a counter-offense, and it will be dramatic fail. Amazing, because this is no clear path to Ukraine to win this war. And then
I know that there's been discussion about Crimea from Ukraine. They've been, making certain hollow threats or whatever. But could you, in this last part of our time together, could you kind of tell the audience maybe some things that they don't understand or that they don't know that you understand, and also, where are we going? Like what? Because it's obvious the U.S. and NATO wants this to be long-term because they're benefiting financially. But where do you see it going right now? Because you lived there, you're from, visually, you can visualize where the battles are happening right now. What do you see kind of happening?
What I see, 20%, Ukraine lost territorial integrity. This is not a country when I was born. It started in 2014. Everybody who was able to negotiate it now in jail or killed. So the last man standing who was ready to make a peace with Putin was Mr. Medvedchuk. He jailed. He's accused in the high treason, and high treason was trading the coal with Donetsk to produce electricity for Ukrainians. Can you imagine, this is a treason? This is a high treason? Okay, so that was the last man who stand to make a peace with Russia, to avoid that cause. He detailed it in our movie, Revealing Ukraine, very clever. Now he is in detention of Ukrainian nationalist Nazi special security service in Kiev. So what's happened to everybody who invite the Russia, who fight against Russia, they suffer, and the history is very clever about that. This was Napoleon, he's gone because of Russia. That was a Hitler, he's gone because of Russia. This was numerous attempts to invade Russia from Turkey or Great Britain, etc., even America send their troops in the Russian Far East. All of them fail because Russians maybe they very they sleepy in the very beginning. It's hard to engage, but when you engage Russians, they will gonna fight forever. The sanctions doesn't work at all. Russian
the ruble's stronger than it's strong.
It's not actually very good for Russia, but they can hold it. They can give it. And it's also, imagine the natural gas cost in Europe now $3,500 per thousand of cubic meters. It's unbelievable. It was a $400 before that conflict. So it's 1,000% more expensive. And another very good numbers. The electricity just reached the cost. I will simplify it for the audience. So $1 per kilowatt. So we're paying here in California a ridiculous price of 18 up to 30 cents, but they pay in dollar now. So this will be very, very hard winter, and winter is coming.
Yeah.
So this winter will be show Europeans what it means to choose the wrong side of history. And sending the German tanks to Russia to fight in Ukraine, this is a very bad memory because it's happened before. And the General Guderian, he's lost the battle under Kursk with the Russian tanks. I'm not pro-Russian. I'm against war. As more that war will exist, as more Ukrainians gonna be killed. Ukrainians. Yeah. This is a problem, and this is making the people rich. So,
sadly, there's no sounds of diplomacy happening that anyone can see. It seems like there's just more and more talk about weapons and war.
Yep.
And I know that we've come closer to nuclear war. I mean, we talked about this last time, you were on the show, and then of course you watched the US provocate with China by sending multiple, so it's almost like we're fighting on two fronts, but this is all about Western hegemony, right? This is all about holding on to power and not being part of a multipolar world, but rather trying to be unipolar. So could you say just a few words before, we end here about the multipolar world and about America's resistance to it?
First of all, we need to vote properly on the next midterms and the next elections, because with that leadership, what's lead us to the abyss, we cannot survive. We need to think not only about us, we need to think about our kids. We need to think about our animals, about life, precious life in this world. Everything what's happening now, showing the signs of insanity on such a level, and without proper and responsible leadership, we slide into the abyss. We need to stop. Everyone who listening to that, who said, make you all little contribution to stop insanity, to stop the war, to stop injustice, and to take care first of all about our well-being, because that's endangered, and our life and existence as a human being species endangered, but non-responsible actions and wrong choices.
I think too, what you're saying is very true, and I also think it's very important to have artists like yourself, directors and producers out there trying to send messages, because people are getting, this propaganda so hard from the West to Russia's bad, America good. It's very basic. There's no nuance. There's no, discussion of details or history. There's a whitewashing of history, like we talked about with the Vogue article. So what projects do you have in mind? And also what kind of is giving you hope that we can have a different reality and have a more cooperative relationship with Russia?
First of all, I'm a man of faith. I believe in God. I believe that we created and sent to this life to achieve the process, in the process of making us suffering, we here to achieve the better quality of our soul. And this is giving me a lot of hope. And this is only what's giving me ability to stand against this all insanity what's happening. You know, sometimes, Tara, it's very hard to read news. You know, you open news, oh my God, oh no, and you're like, I better go to some kind of fantasy world.
Take a walk.
I take a walk, my dog, or watch the dragons on the screen, because I cannot stand this. I love the country, as Leonard Cohen saying, I love the country. I can't stand the sin. This is very hard to stand at the sin, because you see, but I have a hope. I believe in Americans. I believe in people I believe in patriots. I believe in a real patriots who you need to believe in your country all the time, but you don't need to believe in your government. This is a Mark Twain said, that we use that quote in the Ukrainian fire. So I don't have a trust in the government. I have trust in the country. I have trust in patriots who know, who see that, and who understand what's going on. They have that feelings, and they have that critical thinking. I believe in the best part of human soul, what's better than, much bigger than ego, spirit. You know, if you believe in God, you cannot make evil actions. You cannot cause the smaller ones pain. You cannot do this. That's it.
Good. On that note, one more thing. How can our audience find you and follow your work? And is there anything coming up that you'd like to share with the audience?
I'm pretty active on Twitter. We have our YouTube channel, Global Free Pictures, and as well Rumble channel. When we're posting, this is more on YouTube than on Rumble, but Rumble is much more suitable for us because there's no censorship on Rumble. Yeah, and we're gonna participate in different public events soon, especially in November. I'm going to this Dallas event, Patriot Gathering, in the 18th of November. And of course, we're working on some films, but for reason of how our industry work, I cannot disclose. But we're working on something interesting. And a Kazakh, our latest documentary, already in the process of closing the deals with the distributors. It will be everywhere very soon. Yes,
very good.
And of course, we have a couple of projects in the process. We're working on something very amazing, what I cannot disclose for now.
Okay, gotcha. Well, we'll keep watching.
Thank you, Tara.
And I hope that you'll come on again. And I always learn so much, and I always feel, I don't know, the world feels safer with you in it, Igor, and more magical. So thank you for doing all the work that you do. And you know, give my regards to your wife and your family. And I think you have a little bit of sunlight left on our West Coast here, so you can.
No, it's the complete dark. It's completely dark. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay. I still have some sunlight. I'm up in the Pacific Northwest. So, all right. Well, we'll see you next time. And for the audience, thank you for tuning in. You can find this on 8 channels and 11 platforms. And you can find Igor on Twitter and all his amazing work. So take care, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara. Have a good night.
Good night.